Hi everyone, and welcome back to Furniture Shuffle. My name's Randy, and for my next project, I am going to be working on this hutch. I found the top and bottom to this hutch at two different places in the thrift store. Things tend to get separated when they're put out, so make sure you look around. You don't want to miss out, especially with hutches and nightstands. It looks like somebody tried to sell this at a garage sale for $50 before donating it, but I ended up paying $18. At this point, I didn't know what I was going to do with the hutch, but I knew I wanted to do something fun. The hutch was on the small side, so I thought to myself, I've done plenty of dressers for adults. What about a child? So I decided to split this piece up and make a child's dresser and a matching bookcase. This is going to be a two-parter. The first part, I will be doing the dresser, and in the second part, I will be working on the bookcase. So if you want to be notified when the bookcase video drops, just be sure to hit that subscribe button down below. This was pretty popular style of hardware for the time period. I've got a whole drawer full of them, but I will be replacing them with something a little bit more modern. These, on the other hand, I will be replacing, but saving for a future project. Sometimes doing the most mundane tasks, like cleaning a piece, will help me clear my mind and come up with some different ideas, because at this point, I still didn't know what I was going to do with this piece. This was solid maple, as noted by the stamp inside one of the drawers, so I decided that I was going to stain it. Because this was solid wood, instead of scraping first, I decided just to start with an 80 grit sandpaper, and it worked fine, as you can see, but it was taking me a very long time, and my sandpaper kept getting gunked up, and the heat certainly did not help, so let me show you what happened. Just after this one drawer, I went through numerous sandpaper discs, and this is what they ended up looking like. So, I went back to scraping. And even though the scraping is an extra step, in the long run, it actually saved me some time because it was taking a really long time to use the sandpaper, and just getting that finish off with a scraper saved my sanding time immensely. For the edges of the drawers that had a little curve to them, I used this little attachment that came with my scraper that got into that little groove and fit over that curve just perfectly. And then I went over with sandpaper just by hand on those edges. I chose this classic gray stain by Varathane. What I was going for was kind of a driftwoody look. I wanted it to be gender neutral as well as neutral enough to go with any color scheme of the house that this would actually end up in. So that's why I went with the gray. I did end up having to put on 3 coats of the gray to get the depth of the color that I was looking for. Once I had my base color on the dresser, I wanted to create a design that was very whimsical, so let me show you what my inspiration was. This is a piggy bank that a friend of my mom gave me as a child, and I always just loved it. I loved how whimsical, fun, silly, ridiculous it is, so that is my inspiration. For the dots, I just went into my kitchen and found different circular items of different sizes to use as the templates. I laid the objects down in a random pattern. I put tape underneath the edges, and then I took a razor blade and went all around the edge, removed that part, and voila, I have my circles. Another part of the inspiration comes from the movie Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Does everybody remember that movie? So in the movie, there is the Island of Misfit Toys, and specifically, there is an elephant that is polka dot. So going along with the whole theme of the movie, the message is, you know what? It's okay to be different. For the dots, I decided to do a little whitewash, which is just some white paint thinned with about 40 to 50% water. So I just filled in all of the dots with this mixture. I didn't want to go with different colors just because, number one, I didn't want it to look clownish or cartoonish. And number two, I still wanted it to stay neutral so it would fit with any color scheme or any decor in the home it will end up in. Once the dots were painted, I removed the tape while that paint was still wet to prevent too much bleed. I did get a little bit. I just went back with a wet rag and just touched it up a little bit. And then I'll be going back again with some sandpaper once the paint is dry to fine-tune that touch-up. Next, I took 220 grit sandpaper and started sanding down the whole piece just to tone everything down a bit. I wanted a very, very soft look. Like I said previously, I was kind of going for a driftwood type of look with the gray. And then the dots, I want them to be kind of ephemeral, like bubbles or planets floating in space. Once I got the finish sanded down to where I wanted it, I put on 3 coats of my favorite bare water-based polyurethane in a satin finish. I always give it a light sand in between coats of the poly with 220 grit sandpaper just to knock down any dust that may have fallen on there while it was drying. I found these drawer pulls on Amazon and they are just the perfect size for little fingers. The only problem with the new handles was that the screws were too small for the existing holes. So what I had to do is offset the handles just a little bit to cover up the existing holes and then mark where the new screws were going to go and then drill those pilot holes. The great thing about this rustic finish is that parents don't have to worry about their child running into it with toys, getting nicked or dinged, because you can hardly even notice it. For the top drawer, I just use hardware that I had in my stash, and they match the pulls perfectly. Remember what this looked like before, and then the finished piece. I had a great time with this piece. It was a nice departure from doing adult furniture, so I hope you liked it too, and we'll see you next time.